To our show, and we are in an amazing place here. We're talking to an amazing guy. Of course, I've said this before, and Sergeant First Class David Hack. Welcome to our show, Dave.
Thank you.
And you're retired.
Yes, I am.
Okay. But that Sergeant First Class is, that's an impressive rank.
I don't know about that, but it is permanent.
Yeah, it's permanent, and you're also a Purple Heart recipient.
Yes, I am.
How many times?
One time. Well, I take that back twice.
Twice? And they give you one with a star then?
Yes.
Okay, the reason we're here is you got a beautiful new place. And we did a show at your old place, and when we saw the ad, and you reminded me that I never answered my email, so I came down here. And we're now in his beautiful new facility down here in Boston Mills, right?
Well, it's Boston Heights.
Boston Heights, okay.
And we're right at the corner of Boston Heights and Hudson. Our mailing address actually is Hudson, but the Boston Heights, we're across the street from Hudson.
Okay, and we're going to take a tour here. Dave's going to give us the $2 tour, and not even charge us later on. But first, I am curious because I've read your book. I looked at the DVD you had. I've seen your ads. I've heard about you. I remember when you were a recruiter in Akron, Ohio.
That's been a few years back. I was a recruiter in Akron from 1969 to 1973.
And you had a Beetle, right? The Volkswagen, all painted up?
I had a Volkswagen Bug. I had a Jeep that's in the museum at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, 101st Airborne Division. When I retired from the Army, they enshrined it then. And it's still there today.
Oh, wonderful. Also, I was telling Ray, our producer, director, photographer, all-around guy, that I am going to find out who is Sergeant Dave Hack. And I put it this way, that I know what you've done, I know your rank, I've seen all your stuff in your office, but who is the guy inside? Because it takes a special person to do what you've done with your life.
Well, I've always been motivated, and I've always been motivated by accomplishment and motivated by getting the job done and motivated by helping my fellow man.
Well, Dave, you know, I kind of look at your stuff and think about, and I think that what comes to mind, I don't know whether I thought it up or I heard it or read it someplace, forged in steel, tempered by fire. And this kind of describes you.
I've heard that saying before.
Oh, have you? Okay, I must have. I had to swipe it from somebody, but really, we want to find out who is Dave Hack inside? Was it the integrity? You were brought up where, in one of the border states?
I was raised in rural Kentucky.
Were you on a farm?
No.
Okay.
We were too poor to have a farm.
Okay. But when you talk about, and the military, did the military mold a lot of who you are?
I think what happened with me is after we left the country, as we call it, in rural Kentucky, Sunfish, Kentucky, I went to Louisville, Kentucky. Mm-hmm. And we lived in a very poor section of Louisville, Kentucky. And I was in and out of trouble constantly. And my brother, I have three brothers. One is deceased now. My brother that was 4 years older than me took the rap for me one time. And I'd gotten in trouble, and he heard about it and went to the police station. And he says, look, he says, you know, give this guy a break. Why don't you take me and let him go? And he came to me and he says, well, he says, tell Mom I'm not coming home. And then he told me, he says, do me a favor. He says, I've given you an opportunity and a chance to make something of yourself. Now go do it. And with that said, I enlisted in the United States Coast Guard the next day and never looked back and always excelled in anything and everything that I've ever done. but I am the type of an individual that I will never quit, and I haven't quit.
Boy, from your history, it sure looks that way. Now, when did you get into this? You had a lot of, first of all, let's back up a little bit. You had some problems, didn't you, in business? You retired from the Army.
Yes. I retired from the Army, and I was a police officer in Hudson, Ohio, right here. And from being a police officer in Hudson, I was a deputy sheriff, Summit County. And then I was chief of police down in Sebring, Ohio. And I owned 3 parts stores, auto parts stores, foreign car parts stores in Akron called Sergeant Hack's. And after selling that and walking away from being a police officer, I went in this business. My wife and I were sitting around one day, and she says, "Why don't we start selling bomber jackets?" And I says, "Well, sounds like a good idea to me." And then I says, "What should we call the business?" And my wife, Lonnie, she said, "Well, let's call it U.S. Wings." And from there to here, it's all history.
It's been a great history. How big is your building here?
The retail store and the office section is just a hair under 11,000 square feet.
That's about what we have in our warehouse in Akron. That is great. Now, how big was your place down in the shopping center?
Well, we moved there because of the flood, and we were flooded out, so we moved over there. That was about 1,500 square feet, so it was much smaller, and we were cramped, but we had to move. We didn't have a place that we could lease or rent after the flood, so we took whatever we could get, and we signed in there for 5 years, and we were cramped for 5 years.
Okay, we're going to back up a bit. On your Vietnam experience, you were in country, or rather in Vietnam, for how long?
7 months.
And you came out because you were wounded?
Yes, I was medevaced out. I'd gotten wounded the first time April the 10th, 1968, and then the second time I was medevaced out Friday the 13th, 1968, and that was the only time that I'd had been in Vietnam.
Were you wounded during the Tet Offensive?
Yes, I was.
How did it? Can you describe the first incident? How you got it the first time?
The first time I was hit by a rocket. It was a 122 millimeter.
Did it hurt the rocket?
Maybe, because it was in a lot of pieces.
Thank heaven you weren't.
I know, yeah, and I lost a couple ribs and some shrapnel.
Were you on foot or on a machine or?
No, I was on foot.
Were you on a patrol?
No, sir. No, I was at Lai K, and Lai K was a base camp.
Was it a fire base?
It is.
Mm-hmm. How many men were there?
Well, it was a regular base camp, so I would imagine there were several thousands.
Well, that was a big one then.
Yes.
Well, now in Iraq, General McChrystal came in and he started setting fire bases up, and even in Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think of the fire base format or strategy?
I think it works. They had fire bases in Vietnam. I was at a base camp, and a base camp from there you would go out and set up fire bases, smaller sections.
Here a couple of months ago in Afghanistan, there was a fire base that was attacked, and it was in a valley. And that really surprised me, because in the military you always want the high ground. Well, the insurgents had the high ground.
Right. Well, I know very little about over there. I just have a tremendous amount of respect for the armed forces that are serving, and I have mutual respect for their parents that support them, and their relatives and their friends. And my hat goes off to them. It's just like I said, I'm repeating myself, but I have an awful lot of respect for them.
Oh, yeah, we all have to. They did close that fire base up after the casualties, and now McChrystal is starting to rethink the idea of fire bases because they're so vulnerable. They were vulnerable in Vietnam.
Yes, they were. Well, whenever you have a fire base, first of all, the enemy knows exactly where you are. And so you're putting a bullseye right on yourself. And you have to stop and think about that.
Okay, your second wound, when did that happen?
That was Friday the 13th. I was outside of An Loc, in Loc Ninh, and I was on top of a armored personnel carrier, and we were hit by an RPG round, which is, an RPG round is like a bazooka, similar. And we received a direct hit, and it blew the armored personnel carrier up. And so I was wounded there, and the wounds consisted of my back, my face, my head, my arm, my shoulder, and my knee.
Minor scratches.
Yeah.
Oh, you tough guy. You tough infantry guys.
I don't know, but I ended up being medevaced out of Vietnam, and I went to Japan, and they stabilized me there at the 106 Army Hospital in Japan, and then from there I went to Fort Knox, Ireland Army Hospital, and I was a patient at Fort Knox for 1 year. And then the Department of the Army came around and says, "We'd like to have you become a recruiter." And I said, "You guys have to be joking. Come on." Yeah, because I wasn't that keen about the military. But I was selected, and I went through a recruiting school and came out to Akron, and Akron, Hudson, Cuyahoga Falls, Talmadge, this whole northeastern Ohio was my area.
And you seem to have recovered beautifully, and you're like a 25-year-old guy starting this brand new business, not a brand new business, but a brand new location, and a huge one, because you just don't give up, do you?
No, I never quit. It sits on 3.5 acres of land. We were very fortunate. When we purchased the building, we went through Key Bank, and they loaned my wife and I the money on our signature, and which was quite a blessing.
Your story is so inspiring. We'd like to name this DVD or this show, "The Warrior and the Businessman."
I like that. Well, I'm no longer a warrior. I'm 70 years old.
Well, you're a warrior in the business community.
Well,
sometimes you got pretty good enemies in the business community.
Well, business is different than being in the military. It's tough. It really is. It's a challenge. It's a daily challenge. With the way the economy is today, it's even a bigger challenge. And so you have to stay on your toes constantly.
But what you learned in the military really carried over into doing your business operations, didn't it?
I think so. In business, number one, you have to have self-discipline, because you're it, just plain and simple. And you put your back against the wall and you go forward. And a lot of people give you different advice, and a lot of people criticize you, and a lot of people say, "No, that isn't going to work," or "That will work." And you have to follow your own conscience and your own mind. And you have to just keep your eye on the ball and stay focused all the time. And if you do that, and if you're honest and if you're fair, I think that the people you do business with will understand that, and they can read that, and they can see that.
Integrity.
Integrity is definitely the bottom line.
And honesty. Honesty is always the best policy, isn't it?
For me, it is.
And we hope for a lot of other people.
Well, it makes you wonder sometimes.
Okay. We're finding out really who Dave, Sergeant First Class, I got to use your proper rank, Sergeant First Class Dave Hacks, who he really is. He is a guy who's just suffered many, I don't want to use the word suffered, I'll retake that back. He had many experiences, right?
Yes, I have.
And each one kind of molded the man stronger, right?
I think so. And, most importantly, it all starts, I feel, in your home. I really do. I've felt this way all my life. that who you are is just an extension of the way you were raised, and how much love that you came in contact with, and most of all is a family without God is not a family at all.
Well, you've got that right. That's a cliche saying, but also there's an old saying that if it doesn't kill me, it makes me stronger.
Amen to that.
And you've been to the brink a few times, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
What was the worst experience you had or firefighting in Vietnam?
I think all of them were bad, to tell you the truth.
I was afraid you were going to say that.
I think so. I think all of them were bad. Yeah.
There isn't any good war, is there?
No, I'm against war. I'm against killing. I'm against hurting, and I think that if more people go to church together, that we wouldn't have war.
Amen to that. And you carried over into your business now. If you're going to advise a young guy or some young people that not everybody, but a lot of people have a dream about being in their own business, their own boss, not working for anybody. Okay, how would you advise them?
Join the military, stay in the military, retire, and don't go in business.
And don't get shot up.
That's right. Well, the military is like a lock on the door. You have to have it, just plain and simple. Because, what we think and how we feel isn't the way that a lot of other people think and feel. A lot of people are greedy, and a lot of people want what we have. And a lot of people want our democracy, our freedom of speech, our right to go to church. A lot of people want that. And a lot of people want to take what we have. So we have to have a very strong military.
I agree with you on that. But once again, if you're going to sit down and advise a young couple or young guy on going into business, what are the steps you'd tell him? We're going to give you a short course, folks, in business here, okay. And a successful one.
Okay. First of all, you have to write out a plan. You have to know exactly what you want, what kind of business you want. But you have to have a plan, and you have to have a commitment from your family, whether it's going to be you by yourself, whether it's going to be you and your wife, your mother, your father, whoever. But it has to be a total involvement. If these people are going to be involved in the business, you have to consult with them. And then you have to sit down with an advisor. And the best advisor in business, of course, is your friendly banker. And you have to sit down with that banker. And then you have to sit down with an accountant. And then you have to sit down with a trustworthy attorney. And you have to have a feasibility study put together. You have to have a business plan. And if you have that business plan, then and only then do you go forward. But you have to have that first.
How about staying in there? Up and down, rocky times, good times?
You can never quit. You have to tell yourself before you go in that you're there for the stay. You're there for the course. And there's a lot of heartaches, an awful lot. Whenever I first went in business, my wife would take a sandwich into my office, which I worked out of my house, and she'd bring the food in there. And I had a portable phone that I used to keep it on me all the time. I'd sit and have dinner, and the phone was there. So there's an awful lot of heartaches. My children would say, "Hey, Dad, let's do this, let's do that." And you have to say, okay, there's a time for the family and there's a time for business. But you should never get too caught up with the business and forget your family.
We all make that mistake. You were lucky. My wife would bring a sandwich in, but she'd take half of it.
My wife wouldn't.
You were lucky there.
Yeah. Well, I'm blessed to have a loving and a supportive wife.
Oh, yeah, a guy'd have to. Yeah, we went through the same thing, but I'm interviewing you. You're not interviewing me, so we'll leave that for another time.
Well, most of us survivors travel the same road.
Oh, you've got that right. I'm using cliches today. Those are those are good points. Now, you've been interviewed by a lot of people. Now, NPR just the other day.
Yes, and I've been on several talk shows through my whole entire life, and I hope by me being interviewed that I can help other people.
Well, let's hope you can help us, okay? By showing this show around. Okay, I'm going to ask you another thing. This will catch you by surprise. What is the funniest thing that ever happened to you in the military? Of course, I should have asked you that before so you could think about it. Okay, we can go from there to what's the funniest thing in business, if there was any funny things.
The funniest thing in business was I was at my home one night, and the phone rang, and my wife picked up the phone. And she mumbled something and slammed the phone down. And I said, Lonnie, who was that? And she says, some nut that claimed he was Ed Asner wanted to speak to you. And I says, Lonnie, that probably was Ed Asner. And she says, no way. And I said, no, that probably was. I said, Ed Asner, and I go all the way back. And she says, yeah. So the phone rang again. I said, okay, let me pick up the phone. So I picked up the phone. And Ed Asner says, who was that dame that hung the phone up on me? And I said, that's my wife. And I explained to Ed that she didn't believe you. And Ed says, do you have a fax? And I said, yes, I do. And he sent a fax over, and at the very top of it, he says, this is Ed Asner. And then he put a line all the way down, regards Ed, and he faxed it to my wife.
Did you frame it?
Yeah, we had it for years. I don't know what happened to it, but I think that was the funniest thing. Yeah.
You've done a lot of business with a lot of celebrities. Can you clue us in on some of them?
Well, Clint Eastwood is one of our customers. John Travolta is. J-Lo is one of our customers. Dave Letterman's one of our customers. Angela, whoever, she's one of our customers. Ellen is one of our customers. Ellen, I guess, is going on a new TV thing now. And she is one of our customers. I don't particularly, go along with her way of life, but she's still a customer. Mm-hmm. Greta Van Susteren, I don't know if I pronounced that right or not. It's on Fox News.
That's close.
Yeah, it's close enough for government work, right? She's one of our customers, and the list goes on. But everyone, as far as white collar, blue collar, no matter who wants a quality bomber jacket, I think those are our customers.
You mentioned Angelina. That's Angelina Jolie?
Yes.
Brad Pitt's wife?
Yes.
Didn't your wife ask, why didn't Brad Pitt call us instead of her?
I think so.
If he does call, she wants to talk to him.
My wife's a fox anyway.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, this is the end of part one, and we're going to take once again, the $2 tour, okay. And I'll put it on my credit card, okay?
I don't think so. Your money's no good here.
Oh, okay. Well, give me that big jacket over there. I'm just kidding. Okay. Once again, folks, this is we're finished with part one of visiting Sergeant First Class Retired Dave Hack, and we found out what makes the guy tick, and he's ticking away right now.
Yes,
and thanks for being with us. And we're going to take a tour now. And we're going to use up what we have left. And then we're going to go to part two. And you're going to give us the tour of the place here. And you're going to tell us about your merchandise.
Okay.